So for those of you just tuning in, you are on the 40-hour CosmoQuest Hangout-a-thon, where we are working to raise funds to keep all of our science programs going well into the future. We, I think it's safe to say, are going to be powered by maple cream cookies, dog slobber, and science. Not necessarily in that order. I don't know what order those things should go in. Oh, and coffee. That too.
Oh, no. Bill Nash says he's missing a camera cable.
Okay, so Bill, that's okay. Take your time. I have maple cookies. So we will do a brief Ask Me Anything, astronomy related, hopefully. Other questions I may not be able to answer. And the question I have for you is, Kevlar, how did you do the Santa cap thing?
That's the channel points thing at the bottom.
It's the channel points.
For 900 points, you can modify an emote with some previously done.
That is amazing. Okay. Get started.
I have one of those too.
Highlight my message, unlock a random sub-emote, send a message in sub-only mode. Choose an emote to unlock, modify a single emote. I'm going to modify the astronaut helmet with a Santa cap chat. Okay. I didn't succeed in making it visible yet. Why is there no Santa cap? I failed. I failed hard. Select an emote. I selected the emote. It won't let me put a Santa cap now. I don't have 900 chats now. I'm confused. I've been foiled. I've been foiled. I want to put a Santa cap on the astronaut helmet and it won't let me.
Rudolph.
I like the Rudolph ears on. Oh, you guys are the bestest. Okay. You guys are totally the bestest. So, looking to see if there are any questions out there while Bill works on setting his things up. I will earn the 900 points at a certain point. Oh, does modifying give you a second copy of the emote? Is that what I missed? Yes, I found it. I found it. Mission accomplished. I made a thing. It pleases me. You too can get the astronaut thing with sub points. So AstroWise, who is a source of fabulous cookies, along with Keeper of Maps. So Ramph Morpheus says, it's your channel. You have unlimited points. Apparently I don't. The question, so I have two questions out there. The first one is from AstroWise, who says, hi, Dr. Pamela. I saw something in passing about Betelgeuse dimming. You know anything about that? Yes. I don't know as much about it as I would like to. Apparently, if you go out and look at the constellation Orion when it is dark, and we may be trying to do this evening, it currently is missing, not missing, but that bright, super bright red shoulder star is apparently a meh red star. It has noticeably faded. It is now a similar magnitude to Castor and Pollux, the head of the twins in Gemini, and thus is going to actually disappear if you're in an extraordinarily light polluted place. We don't know why. No idea why. This is a red giant. Red giant stars can undergo lots of different crazy awesome processes. They are pulsating slightly. This is a star that is known to vary in brightness over time. And it's also a star that is suspected to eventually be a target of possible explodiness. It will eventually die as a supernova if we understand things correctly. Now, we know that these stars do weird things in their end of days. Those of you in the southern hemisphere may have been outside one night looking at Eta Carina, which is one of the brightest stars, and gone, why the heck is it called Eta instead of Alpha? Well, it's because when we labeled the southern hemisphere stars, Eta Carina was a whole lot more faint. In the late 1800s, something happened, and Eta Carina sent out a flash of light. It became the brightest object in all the sky, and then slowly faded away. We know that this is a binary system. It's probably going to go boom. We don't know when, but it had that false nova event in the 1800s. So I'm kind of hoping at least for a false nova event out of Betelgeuse. I will settle for a false nova event. So I see the question coming in on Discord. Where's Bill Nash? He's missing a cable. He went to go find a cable for his camera, and I'm just going to answer questions while he does that. I'm going to take a bite of cookies before I answer. How did I learn to find and apply for grants? Because that requires cookie. I love people trying to figure out how to spell Betelgeuse, Betelgeuse. All three pronunciations are valid. When I was in middle school, I got into a knockdown, drag-out argument over the pronunciation of that star because a certain human, who I happen to share half my genetic material with, insisted that there could not be a star named Betelgeuse. This was the same time the movie Beetlejuice was out. Both our pronunciations were valid. Only one was allowed in our house, and it was not mine. I am still bitter. The question coming in from Planetary Pan is, how did you learn how to find and apply for grants? The how is called desperation and wanting to eat. When you attend major professional meetings, you will hear about different workshops on how to apply for grants. And being a diligent person who had just finished my PhD, I attended several of those workshops, just keeping the door open, trying to figure out what I wanted to do in the future. We applied for a grant with Slacker Astronomy back in 2005, which was when podcasts this was 2006 because the iTunes library existed. We applied back in 2006. We got a sufficiently weird referee report back that the program officer actually called us and apologized. We were slammed in our grant proposal for not having our podcast in iTunes, even though we had a screen capture of us listed as both new and noteworthy, as well as being in the top 10 on iTunes. It was all very, very confusing. We got rejected due to that referee's report, which is a long-winded way of saying getting grants is a fickle thing. You get grants because your proposal is rock solid, excellent, hands down, nothing in it can possibly be questioned. They believe you can accomplish it. You get grants because people know your name, know your institution's name, and they believe your institution will support you in completing the work. And you get the grant because everyone reading the grant was awake enough or asleep enough to like what they were reading and not in a bad mood. And so there is a certain variability that goes into getting grants that is super frustrating. And I don't quite know how to explain it other than sometimes the fates are kind and sometimes they are not. The best way to find a grant is to go to fastlane.nsf.gov and search NSF and to, there is a listserv from NASA that you can apply to get your email address on, and they will send you notifications of every new grant that goes up. There are also lots of small pots of money scattered in different foundations, different corporations. The NASA Space Grant Consortium is one example. For science communication, there's the Knight Foundation. And you just have to basically keep a running calendar of knowing when what is due and try and figure out how to get the work that you want to do to conform to what people are willing to fund. In 2008, I found myself in a position where, having moved for a job, they hired someone identical to me on paper in every way except for gender and age. And these things happen. So I need to figure out how to pay myself. And grants was how I did it. Grants was how we did it. So I see Zenauzwa. I'm not sure how to say your name. It is asking, when do we think Betelgeuse will kaboom? No idea. Hopefully soon. Let's see what else we have in here. I'm looking for a better question in terms of less depressing. Cookie ASMR. Sorry about that. I hope you enjoyed the cookie ASMR at least. Oh, there's a picture from the Bad Astronomer about Betelgeuse being super dim. Oh, that's so weird. So weird. Thank you for sharing the links. I like that correction. Didn't mean to star the cookie ASMR. Was midway typing. Do we have a good candidate for possible start that will have a visible to the naked eye supernova? And is it within our lifetime since we're so overdue? So either Eta Carina or Betelgeuse are probably our best bets. We don't, in terms of a massive star end of life kaboom. What we don't always know is how many white dwarfs are out there sucking material off their neighbor that are going to go kaboom as a type 1a supernova. So there's many different ways to go kaboom. And if you're looking at massive stars, Eta Car and Betelgeuse are our best bet. Sometimes I don't realize what comes out of my mouth. Yes, hurry up and die, you star. Yes. Oh, Bill Nash apparently missed an email. Bill, I'm going to back channel you the URL. Sorry, mistakes were made. Mistakes were made. And by you missed an email, I mean I totally forgot I'd been corresponding with you on Hangouts. Mistakes were made. Okay, so Bill now has the link. Expendable Redshirt says, in the space horror movie Life, 2017, the Canadarm captures a Pilgrim 7 probe that is about to meet an unfortunate end. Could the Canadarm actually do something like that? It all depends on the differential velocities. The real issue is if the velocities are too great, it's going to just snap the arm off. If the speeds are such that the arm doesn't snap, we're good. We're good. It would send the entire system tumbling unless engines were fired to prevent a tumble from occurring, simply because you have essentially I'm going to use the hamster. The hamster. So if the scissors are the Canadarm and angry hamster is the space station, when the arm grabs something, it's going to torque it and the whole system is going to start rotating unless the tag of rocketry fires, preventing the whole system from rotating by counteracting the force that's hitting up here. I love my space hamster. He is quite fabulous. I'm sure that hamsters in space could be a thing. So far, I think they've mostly sent mice. Bill, can we have video, please? Lower left-hand corner, there is a mouse icon that will allow you to set up your video. And once I see you, I will switch scenes so that they can see you. Okay, do we have other questions out there in the chat? Ooh, I see a silhouette. Oh, Bill. And now I have Bohemian Rhapsody in my head. He's not ready yet. Rocket rodents. Don't hamsters run the ISS? That might explain some of the power problems they've had. Is that what they were replacing? I thought they were replacing the things out on the solar couplings. Oh, I love how photographers always have good cameras. He has this beautiful vignetting effect that you will all see in a moment that is making me happy, and hopefully it will make you happy too. Here we go. Hello, Bill. We can't hear you. We can see you.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
There.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Apologies for being late. I thought I was a few hours away.
Oh, dear.
I thought I was up for 1 p.m. 1 p.m. my time, but we can talk now. That's great.
Oh, man. I'm so
You just saw
sorry.
If the camera had been on, you would have seen the most frantic scramble setup. I literally just lost my mind like 5 minutes ago because last night I went out to get ready for later tonight.
Yeah.
I was auditioning a couple of locations out near Lake Mead that had Wi-Fi that I could stream on. And that worked out pretty well, except for the fact that it was cloudy, so I didn't get to set my scopes up. But all my stuff is packed up in this little rolly bin over here. And it was in the truck, including the cable that goes with that camera. So I just did a run down to the garage to get that out. Now, unfortunately, I live in an access-controlled building where in order to get back in, I need my phone. My phone is right there. I park on the 5th floor. I had to do this walk all the way down to the ground floor and then knock on a door and hope somebody would let me in. Yeah, that was awful. But that's what I get for waking up on a Saturday. Good morning, everyone.
So one of the things, I don't know if you heard, that we've been talking about is the dimming of Betelgeuse.
Yes.
Have you seen this?
I have not seen it myself yet. It's been cloudy here for the past few days since I heard about it. And I'm just like, I would love to go out and point a scope at it, but...
How are your skies looking for this evening?
It's still overcast this morning. It is forecast for partly cloudy tonight. So it's hope, right? You just, Mother Nature doesn't always cooperate. That is the most important lesson I've learned as a photographer. And it's been driven home extra hard as an astrophotographer.
Yes.
There's a joke that I like to tell people that coincidentally, the act of packing your telescope to take it out is you're mirroring the exact actions of an ancient Indian rain dance. And it's all coincidental. So every time someone wants to pack up their scope, clouds roll in. So you can blame astrophotographers for bad weather. It's our fault. The universe hates us.
Yeah. So I have a Sterlina telescope that I'm supposed to be testing and doing a review of. And it has been cold, cloudy, or muddy to the point that I don't know where I could set up the scope since it was delivered to our house. So we're going to do an unboxing of it on channel early in the morning. And so I fully expect it to be completely cloudy tonight because, of course, if it wasn't completely cloudy, the telescope could be used. But
yeah, since I took up astrophotography last year, like I've been doing landscape photography for decades, but I didn't get into actually putting my camera onto a telescope until a few years ago. I used to I lived in Phoenix for the longest time, and I would
Yeah.
periodically bounce down to Tucson where Kit Peak is. And because Kit Peak has their nightly visitors program. If you're not familiar with Kit
Right.
Peak, it's one of the largest collections of telescopes in the world. I mean, big professional telescopes on top of this peak in the middle of an Indian reservation in southern Arizona. And they have 3 large telescopes that they set aside for their nightly visitors program. If you ever find yourself in Tucson with nothing to do, look up Kit Peak. It's amazing. It's a 45-minute drive. The peak itself is like 6,000 feet above the valley floor. And one of their visitor scopes, when you're standing there, like they give you, if you've got a big group, they split everybody up and they assign an astronomer to you.
Yeah.
And one of the scopes is situated over to the side where the cliff just drops off, and you could just, like, if you throw something hard enough, you might be able to get it all the way down. I mean, just this great drop and this beautiful vista in front of you. And the first time I went up there, I was hooked. But one of the trips I went up there, that's about 3 years ago, I think, maybe 4. One of the scopes that they were looking at had a smaller. I say smaller. I believe it was like a 400 or 500 millimeter focal length telescope being used as the finder on this much bigger scope. And I'm looking at him like, hey, is that a T-mount right there? And he's like, yeah, that's for a Canon. I'm like, do you have one? I'm like, yes, I do. And pull my Canon camera out, and he let me throw my camera on there and take this beautiful high-resolution photo of the moon. And I'm like, so you could just put your camera right on the scope like that? He's like, yeah, you can.
Yes.
I'm like, well, I guess I need a telescope now. But in a lot of my road trips, I would just do like these wide field shots of, like, you get some landscape in the front, you get the starscape in the back, and I was pretty happy with that. And I've decided I'm not happy enough. I have not 1 but 2 telescopes now, so I'm extra happy. It's been a challenge, and one thing they don't warn you about when you get into photography is the accessories and the accessory.
Oh my
bag.
goodness! Oh yes,
Like,
yes.
I used to make fun of women for their large handbags full of stuff, right? Well, I have more bags than any of my ex-girlfriends I've ever had. My outings, my camera bag by itself is probably a good 20 pounds. One camera, 3 lenses, flashes, whatever, my cables and stuff. Oh God, the cables.
Yes.
It's an adventure.
Yeah, there was one day, one of my favorite things to do when I travel is to find a way to add an extra day for me, either book my flight as the last flight out of a city or just do something so I can explore. And I had a day in Lisbon, and one of the things that I will do is I'll take transit to the oldest, most historic spot and then walk my way back to where I belong. And I took the I don't know if it's a cable car or just a train up to St. George's Castle and walked my way off the hill, walked all over the city, basically there's a steeple, I'm going to walk towards it. And I had my camera bag with me, and like you said, camera body, 3 lenses. I had a battery pack with me, my iPad with me as well, so I could pull the pictures off and see them bigger to see if I actually liked what I'd gotten. And I walked like 20 kilometers that day. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I was meeting one of my collaborators and her husband at a shopping mall, and we were going to walk from there to go get dinner. So we meet up, and I was going to run into a store with her, and her husband was like, here, let me take your bag. And I pull off, I have a messenger style Timbuktu camera bag, and I hand it to him, and he's just like, the look of, what on earth did you just hand me? Is this rocks? And it's just like, no, it's just glass, a lot of glass and aluminum. So, yeah. Now,
yeah, one of my bigger lenses, Mike, is this. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I keep talking. You're good.
Okay. One of my bigger lenses, it's a Canon 70 to 200 millimeter zoom lens. And you'll see photographers, the ones with the white body, they really stick out. But that thing is stealing glass. I get tennis elbow from slinging that thing around. Sometimes it's not a light hobby. My joke about it is that every day is leg day. because you're hauling all that extra weight around.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, there are accessories you can get to distribute that weight better around your body to make it easier to do all that. Like I have a thing called a spider holster. And I feel like Han Solo when I'm wearing it because it takes all the weight of my camera and it's right there on my hip. Like I've got a blaster. I can just walk around like, oh, shoot. But then one day I was shooting, I used to shoot for Phoenix Comic-Con as one of their staff photographers. And that's an event where you need two cameras, one with the zoom lens and one with the wide angle lens because because you're doing different things. And so I bought a double spider holster. And I really felt like Han Solo because I got one on each hip now. All I needed was the vest and, maybe hair, and it would have worked out better. It's funny. You mentioned the pack an extra day or add an extra day to a trip and go tour.
Yeah.
The night the trip that I fell in love with the night sky, I was in Adelaide for a IETF conference, and I did that exact thing. I added a weekend to my flight time, so I had some time to actually play tourist. And for those who have been to the Southern Hemisphere, you know what I'm about to talk about. I was walking around in Adelaide one night, just being a tourist. I had a beer in my hand, and just because you can do that there, you can walk around with a beer. And I looked up, and I almost dropped my beer. I didn't, but I almost did. There's Orion right there, the most familiar constellation to most of us. But he was upside down, and that was really confusing me. I'm like, why is that? I don't understand this. Oh, that's why they call it the land down under. Everything's upside down. But the next morning, then I glanced over and like, oh, hey, look, there's the whole Milky Way. Oh my God, it's huge. And so the next morning I went to I found an a camera shop that sold telescopes and stuff. And I bought this big, I forget, that was a 1.2 meter telescope on this very sturdy wooden frame with manual tracking toggles and everything. And I bought this big duffel bag. I threw it in the bag and I found a taxi. I'm like, there's a restaurant thingy up on that Mount Lofty, I think it was. And I'm like, take me up there. And he's like, okay, tourist. And he hauls me up there. And there's a nice restaurant, but there's this great, this deck with this beautiful view of the valley and the city below. Yeah. And then the sun went down and the stars came out and I was giddy. I set this thing up and it was my first run with a real telescope, right? So, and I say that now because I've got all this fancy gear. But I'm driving this thing around, and the Southern Cross is very easy to pick out of the Southern Hemisphere in the sky. It's just a cross-shaped constellation. But just above it and to the left, there's this little thing called the Jewel Box. And it's like 6-7 whole galaxies fit in one frame of your view. And when you look at something like that, there's something in your brain clicks and you're like, oh, you're really small, very, very small. And it changes your perspective on things a little bit. And I can pin everything to that exact moment is when I fell in love with the night sky. My dad taught me how to shoot a DSLR or an SLR, a film SLR when I was a kid. So I've been shooting with cameras most of my life, but shooting a night sky is a completely different challenge. Like when I decided to take up photography as a semi-professional hobby, my dad's first words are, that requires a lot of patience, right? What are you trying to say, Dad? And he was right. I have learned an immense amount of patience since I started doing night photography. And it changes the way you look at the world a bit. You develop this strange relationship with time where like I will go out on a road trip now and I will look at a landscape. I'm like, what is that going to look like 10 hours from now?
Yes. Where will the sun be? What shade of gold will this become?
Mm-hmm. And that it's a weird thing because different areas of the country have different qualities of light. It's a weird thing to say it that way. And it's because of, like Moab is a great example. That entire region of the country where it's all red rocks and desert, but the light there is some of the best I've ever shot in because there's another photographer I will shoot with periodically. He's a ex White House photographer. He's done all kinds of crazy stuff. But he took a couple of physicists out there and they got into an argument about why the light there is so good, and it's because of the dust particles in the air and the way it scatters and the light around. And if you've never seen it, you just have to go to Arches National Park and experience it. Arches is fantastic. But you go to places like that, and you and I actually got into a discussion about one of the photos I shot there because everybody sees like this band of the Milky Way, and you're arguing about which portion of the Milky Way it was. I'm like, oh God, I have so much to learn about the sky. You guys are looking at one photo, and you can tell which part I'm looking at. I'm way behind.
But you're ahead of us in other places. So, for instance, you came on Zoom, and I was just like, I want to know how he set. What are you using as your camera to stream? Because it looks amazing. You have this beautiful narrow field of focus, depth of field.
So my stream camera is a Canon 7D. And most of the magic of that comes from the lens that I have on it. The lens that's on it is a 24 millimeter prime 1.4 f-stop lens. And I bought this lens. Actually, the photo we were talking about before, where you guys figured out what I was looking at, I shot with this lens. I bought this lens specifically for shooting the sky. And I took it on this road. I took it on a 2-week road trip. I was on vacation from work at the time. And I started in Phoenix, and I drove all the way to Wisconsin and back. I did this huge loop through the Midwest. And on day 2 of the trip, I had my camera bag open in the back seat, and I was stopping and shooting along the way. Like if I saw something cool, I would stop and I got to my hotel that night, and I went to pull my camera bag out, and one of my lens pouches was open, and this brand new lens that I'd had for less than a week makes a run for it. It's like freedom and dives for the asphalt.
Yeah, I had my 18 to 270 do that.
Yeah, and that's a nice long lens. But I see it hit, and I hear a pop, and I hear a tinkle, 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 and I see glass go shooting across. And luckily, the cheap $10 UV filter that I had on the front of the lens took one for the team.
Oh, that's awesome.
It shattered. It took the blow. It bent the ring. But it bent the ring. I could not get that thing off to save my life.
Yeah.
I wound up on day 8 of my 10-day trip stopping at a camera store in Denver, and a dude pulls out a pair of pliers and whoop, pulls it right off like it was nothing. I'm just like, but that lens, this lens, because it's a 1.4. If you're familiar with photography terminology, lenses are rated for speed based on their f-stop, which is a relationship of the aperture to the focal length. And the lower that number is, the faster the lens is, the more light that it can allow through. So that's why I bought this one specifically for shooting night skies. Now, the problem with it is that because it is a wider angle prime, you get this spherical distortion around the edges that I really dislike in something that I would consider art that when I hang on my wall. I've shot a few shots with it that way, and once I blew them up to like 24 by 36 or bigger, all I can see is that curved distortion, so it drives me batty. So that lens on this camera becomes effectively a 35 millimeter lens, which is great for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that is my stream camera. I use it for video conferencing at work all the time, and you can always tell who's never been in a call with me before, because like on Google Hangouts, as soon as you start talking, the camera switches to you, and you just see people do this. They just lean back like, whoa. It's a great setup. You know, you get some good soft light. One of my coworkers joked that he couldn't understand how I got any work done if I spent all day in the makeup chair. And I'm like, nerd, I wake up looking like this.
Yes.
But,
yes.
So Canon 7D it's a $3,000 webcam at this point. But it's the hardware I use the least. Like my camera bag's sitting right here, and I've got a collection of lenses. Like Econ Greg and I were talking the other night, and we were comparing notes on like how much his telescope cost versus mine. And then he says, yeah, but what's your camera bag worth? And I'm like, all right, that's fair. Because he's got this big, beautiful Rasa, I think it is, sitting behind him when he's like showing live images of nebula and getting the nebulosity in a live video stream. I'm like, I hate you. I don't want that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, those new fast scopes are fantastic, and I will get there eventually, but I'm not quite there yet. So, like I said earlier, I was out scouting last night. So in the back of my truck, all my gear is loaded and staged and ready to go for tonight. So I can just roll out, set up, and go. I've got a 10-inch Dobson taking up an entire seat by itself because it's huge. And then I've got an 80 millimeter apochromatic refractor that I would use for imaging with. I throw my Canon 5 DSR on that and use that for imaging night sky, because there's one thing they don't tell you about when you get into this hobby is the sheer quantity of accessories that come with it. I have enough cables here that if I ever get taken prisoner, I can fashion a rope and escape. It's a ridiculous hobby with lots of accessories. No one
I
warns you
think I
about
have
this.
that many broken cables. I need to do an art
You
project
know,
with them.
I was gonna say just bite the bullet and throw them out, but yeah, an art project with cables would be good. I didn't think about that. One, if you've seen the movie iRobot, if you take a
Hmm.
good look at the musculature on all of those robots, you could fake that pretty well with a lot of those cables. So you could build yourself an android or something that looks like an android. It doesn't have to work, but
And I do cosplay. Therefore, no cable gets thrown out in hopes of
mm-hmm.
someday doing that kind of a cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there, someone like me, I can go out, I can do beautiful exposures in terms of the how crisp the stars are, how balanced my red, green, and blue filters are. But when I'm done processing it, what I have is a scientific representation of an object.
Mm-hmm.
You can go out and take a photo of the exact same thing, but because of how you align things differently, because of how you tweak things differently,
Mm-hmm.
I want to put yours on the wall. Can you talk about some of the things that goes into going from doing something that is a photo to doing something that is a photo?
Wow, there's so much to it, and some of it's just practice in composition. Composition
Yeah.
is probably the key. Like I've gone out on photo walks with other tourists or other photographers, where you get like a group of 10 people and you're just walking through some area and everybody's just talking and taking pictures of whatever they see. But when you come out of it at the end of it, everybody, you've got 10 different perspectives on the exact same thing. You all walk through the same area. Hey,
Yeah.
Veronica, thank you so much for that tip. Um, but you get 10 different views on something and you learn suddenly
Thank you,
everybody's
Veronica Cure. Sorry, I heard
yeah.
the noise and I'm like, what window is responsible?
I saw it
Thank
come up in the chat.
you. I would offer you one of these amazing cookies, but you're too far away. Um,
But yeah, composition is really what it comes down to is how you place things in the image. And like our brains are hardwired to see things, to recognize things that conform to the golden mean. I don't know why that is. I just know that it is. So there, where you place things in your composition, there is a science to it and a little bit of artistry. That's why the rule of thirds is a thing. Like if you were to split your view frame up into 1/3, like throw a tic-tac-toe grid.
Instagram does this for you.
Yes. Yeah, Instagram cheats, but because they use that square frame, it makes it a lot easier to get stuff into that alignment. But if you were to just throw a tic-tac-toe grid up on your screen and then align things along those lines, not in the center, like something I do for like when I'm always out on these trips, someone sees my camera and they're instantly, hey, could you take a picture for us? Because they both want to be in the picture.
Right.
And when I do that, I will line that photo up, and instead of just taking a picture of them, I will shift them off to one of those 1/3 lines and put the background of where they are in the rest of it. So suddenly it's not a photo of them; it's a photo of the place with them in it.
Yes.
And it's a very subtle switch to flip in how you compose your shots, but not like X's and O's, more like instead of actually in the box, on the lines.
Yes.
Those are your 1/3 lines. On those points where the lines cross are great, and on the lines. That's where you want to put your subject, the thing you're taking a picture of, because you want to give a sense of presence to whatever your subject is. Don't take a picture of it. Put it in a place, and I think that's really one of the key aspects to landscape and scenic photography. You want to have something that's in the foreground that's going to connect to the background. You want a leading line that's going to pull the viewer in and start their eye somewhere, and then they wander through. One of the best compliments I ever got was it was one of my first art shows. I had printed a bunch of what I thought were my best photos at the time, and this was 10 years ago. It's changed a lot since then. But the compliment I got that let me know I was on the right track was there was a guy who was just standing there looking at my stuff. He didn't buy anything, but he was looking. He's like, I like how all of your shots just pull me in. Like I feel like I'm in the place. And that's really what it comes down to is selection of your elements and how you frame up your composition. I like to use a lot of leading lines if I can. If there's a road in or a fences are my favorites. Something that is going to connect the foreground to the background is pretty important. Sometimes I use clouds. It just depends on what you're looking at. Every scene is different, so every scene is a challenge. Not all of them come out. I mean, I've been doing landscape photography semi-professionally for a while, and I still have my bad days. So it's definitely it's sometimes it's the camera, but most of it's in your eye and it's in your brain. It's how you see it, it's how you frame it. Those are the really important things. Like, you can hand me any camera, and I can probably take a decent photo with it.
Now, if someone wanted to learn, how do you learn taste?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Did you look at a lot of photographs? So
Yes.
I at one point in my career worked with someone who was an artist who'd look at what I said and he'd always yes but. He didn't yes and. He yes but, to point it out, all the things that I was taking out just because I'd done all these things that nullified what was good in my photos, what was good in the illustrations I did. Who was the yes but or the photography influences that let you learn?
I grew up we live in the best time ever to be studying photography, because we have everyone who came before us to learn from. I mean, we're literally standing on the shoulders of some giants. Ansel Adams is a good example. I've looked at a lot of his work. But National Geographic, when I was a kid, my mom got this wild hair up and we moved to the Caribbean for 4 years.
Wow.
And the house we moved into, the previous owners left behind this massive bookshelf that I can still picture in my head where everything is on it. It was God, it had to have been 10 feet long, like 4 or 5 racks high. But the entire top row was National Geographics.
Oh, wow.
So my first and youngest exposure to imagery like that, aside from the stuff that my dad had shot and had on his wall, was National Geographic covers, all the work that Nat Geo was doing back in the 80s, and fantastic photography. I mean, that is still considered one of the best awards you can get as a photographer, is to get on the cover of National Geographic.
Yeah.
It's like a NASA astrophotography or astrophoto of the day. You know, you get one of those, people are like, dude, it's a big deal. But like most of us, have been exposed to excellent photography our entire lives. Magazine covers, when you're in the checkout line at the grocery store, you see these magazine covers with great photos on them. What we see on TV, movies are a great example of excellent photography, not just cinematography, but really good photography, because in order to do cinematography, you've got to learn how to use a camera first. So we see it all the time. Now, the trick is connecting what we've seen and what we understand to be, that's a great shot, to taking this camera in your hand that's just a filter between time and light, and replicating what it was about that photo that grabbed you. Like now when I look at a photo, I don't just look at it as like, oh, that's pretty. I stop and I look at it. I'm like just close your eyes and then open your eyes and pay attention to how you react to it. Where does your eye go first? What grabs your attention about it? And then photography is as much self-exploration as it is exploration of the world, because you learn what the things you are, what the things you like are. And I think that's where taste comes from, right? What interests you and what looks good to you, compared to, like, there's a guy in Phoenix, Jesse, can't remember his last name, but he specializes in tasteless art. Some really disgusting stuff. I tagged along with a friend of mine to one of his shoots because she was his model. And I get there and he pulls out like this gallon of fake blood. I'm like, oh, we're in for it. Because he's an artist, and no two ways about it. He and I do not have the same taste. The things that I like are not the things that he likes, and vice versa. But we had a great conversation about photography the entire time. So that's really part of the adventure. Now, we live at a time when everybody has a camera in their pocket now. So photography is something that you can practice all the time, especially competition. You don't have to get a photo out of it that's going, that National Geographic's be knocking on your door for, but you can practice composition all the time. And I think that's the biggest thing that you need if you want to make photography as art, is to practice that. Like I'm always framing. It irritates whoever I'm dating at the time when we're out in public, and I will stop and I'm looking at something and they've continued on. They're like, hey, what are you doing?
I'm the same way. I
I'm just,
annoy everyone I travel
yeah.
with. Yes, I did that at
I'm always
Disney
at the
all
back
last
of the
week.
pack. Yeah, I'm always at the back of the pack because you start to see the world differently. Things will catch your eye now. Like, oh, that's cool. If I had a camera, or I'll pull my phone out and I'm framing it up. That's really it. I mean, there's no substitute for practice. There's no magic pill that's going to turn you into a pro photographer. You just have to practice at it. Oh, Nancy, that's fantastic. Yeah, photography as a family activity is awesome. If you can get your kids into it, they won't be able to afford drugs.
It's that, yes. Photography or horses, cameras are less likely to kill you.
Yes.
And Veronica Cure, thank you so much for the sub. Am I thanking the correct person? Let me double check that I'm thanking the correct person. No, Veronica 1, William Eccleston. Kay Barat, thank you so much for the sub. And Nancy's pointing out William Eggleston is another amazing photographer. And thank you again, Kay Barat.
I'm going to look him up. A photographer I learned about last night is Travis Burke. I'm going to be looking into his work. I was actually listening to him talk to our friends at OPT on their Space Junk podcast last night.
Very cool.
But yeah, it comes down to practice and repertoire. Once you understand what you like, then it's a matter of learning how to get the camera to produce what you want. And in some cases, every camera is different. Like I own 3 DSLRs, and people are like, why do you have 3? I'm like, because they're all different.
Yeah,
they're all cameras. Like, no, they're different. It's like why do you have 3 kids? Well, they're all different.
I love that analogy.
I owned 2 Jeeps at one point, and like people are like, why do you have 2? I'm like, they're completely different. They look the same, but
they're totally different.
But
there's also software involved. This summer, you and I were lucky enough to be out at Joshua Tree, where we got a little bit of clear skies, and I took a photo that looked okay enough on my computer screen. And our friend Dustin Gibson got his hands on it, and he was like, bzz, 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 bzz.
Oh, he's a madman.
I was just like, what? I took that, and it was my photo. But all of a sudden, it went from I was pleased to I want to inflict this photo on others. I became a 12-year-old.
Yeah, so that comes down to editing repertoire, and it's the same thing. You learn the things you like. I like contrast in my photos. I like my blacks to be dark. I like my whites to not be blown out. So there are everybody's got their own. Like if you hand me and Dustin the same photo, we will probably produce something that's different. There will be little maybe in the same range, but there will be little touches that will identify either of us. And that's fairly common between photographers, because there's the photography process and then there's the editing process. Now sometimes you get shots that require 0 editing, and those are magic moments, let me tell you. Wow, that was loud.
Sorry, the next guest is on standby in Zoom.
I was not prepared for the doorbell.
So sorry.
But yeah, the editing process, for the longest time, I used to swear up and down, I'll never Photoshop my photos. Then I realized I need to Photoshop my stuff, because what I'm getting out of the camera is not enough. So that's its own challenge.
Well, and what I really appreciate, because with your stream, I think somehow in our enthusiasm to talk about cameras, we missed, you are another Twitch streamer. You are part of the Knowledge Fellowship. And you do both photography on stream and a whole lot of image processing. And if you just need a stream of pretty things to bring you joy, his stream is filled with pretty things to bring you joy. Except when he's having an argument with a camera, in which case it's just amusing as someone who's not having the argument with the camera.
Yeah, lately we've been having arguments with the telescopes. I've been actually doing programming on my stream and building these little small computers for controlling my telescopes over the network. So I haven't been doing a lot of editing lately. I also haven't been doing a lot of shooting lately, because the telescope and work have been consuming much of my time. But yeah, the editing process is very cathartic. If I'm having a bad day, I will bust out Lightroom and just start editing, go get myself lost in the place that I've been, And that's there is some magic to that process. It is meditative in some respects. Unless there's power lines are the bane of my existence. If I get power lines on one of my photos, there's a little part, there's a little vein that starts throbbing. Like, oh, I hate everything. So yeah, some of my editing sessions are just me taking elements of humanity out of these beautiful landscapes that I find.
Yes, I can't tell you how often flying over the American Southwest, especially flights from DFW to LAX, which go over all the canyon lands. It's glorious and gorgeous, and then there are roads, and it's just like, why, people? Why must there be a road here? But our hour is starting to come to a close, and I'd like you to tell people where all can they find you and find out more about what you do and find the photography that comes out as a result.
You can find me on social media. My social media handle is billn.net, DOTNET, Billn, BILN.DOTNET. And you can find me here on Twitch, Twitch TV/Bill Nash. My stream schedule is typically 2 nights a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's been a little slack recently, as with the end of the year crunch with work, we've been really busy. But right now, I just reorganized all my telescope gear because it is the most wonderful time of the year. It's winter, the nights are longer, and the skies are sharper because it's cold. So everybody's gonna be doing Christmas. I'm gonna be out with my camera. But yeah, that's where you can find me. But I'm happy to help if you have questions about photography in general. My Discord is always open, and I'm happy to help wherever I can.
And you often have photo challenges in your Discord, which again, pretty things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all, and that's the photo challenges are part of that repertoire thing. To get people out and shoot, because there's no substitute for practice.
So thank you. This has really been a pleasure. Do you have any parting words for our audience?
Get your cameras out. Go explore the world. I mean, don't just look at it, or don't just walk through it. Stop and look at it sometime.
That is amazing. So thank you so much, Bill. I look forward to both of us getting our streaming time back so that I can go back to rating you on a regular basis.
All right. You guys have a great afternoon.
You too. I'll see you later.
Bye-bye.
So while our next guest works on getting set up in the chat, not in the chat, in the Zoom, or more to the point, as I figure out I did something. What did I do? I'm trying to figure out. I'm going to need to refresh this window, I suspect. There we go. I got it. Okay. So I just need to type in the details for our next guest. And while I do that, I'm going to remind all of you who are just joining that you are watching the CosmoQuest Hangout-a-thon. We have a slow roll towards our goal this year. We're probably not going to make it, but you know, this is what we need to get through 2020. Currently, you've got us through most of January. Can we do a little bit better, people? So we are currently working on raising funds to keep all of our programs here at CosmoQuest going through 2020, where when we take into consideration what do we normally bring in on Patreon, what do we normally bring in on Bits, when we add all of this together and we look at how many hours it takes to produce all of our content, wow, when we do that math, we realize we're actually doing a lot of unpaid labor. And we love all of you, and we love astronomy. But my personal fantasy is to pay everyone on my staff a living wage. You can help make this possible by giving. If you enjoy what you see, if you enjoy the content you get here on CosmoQuest, if you want to continue to see ways for everyday people to be part of exploring our universe and beyond, well, the way you can make that happen is to give. Now, I just need to update the names. I will have you on screen in just a minute. So in the last year, we have switched institutes. We have a variety of different research grants currently pending. And our goal is to build up CosmoQuest so that in the long term, we are funded through a mixed suite of funding sources where we have grant money. I'm typing on the wrong keyboard. That's why it's not working. We have grant money. We have Patreon. And we want to look more like NPR. We're not there yet, but we want to get there. And we are more than willing to sing for our supper. And so what you're seeing this weekend, thank you so much, Bill Nash. Thank you for the $100 tip. Thank you so much. Thank you. What you're seeing this weekend is all of us singing for our supper, saying, we are here to do awesome things. We are here to awkwardly try and make sure all the labels for our next guest have the correct names. There we are. And to just bring you as much science as we possibly can.